Have you ever pushed through pain to finish something important, only to spend the next several days recovering? What if slowing down could actually help you do more of what matters in the long run? If you're finding these evidence-based strategies helpful, please like and subscribe to join our supportive community. Your journey matters, and together we're discovering new possibilities beyond pain. Greetings. It's nice to see you again. And those here for the first time, you're very welcome. Today I'm sharing a remarkable story that might completely change how you think about pacing and energy management in your pain recovery journey. Lance is a 56-year-old former firefighter I worked with last year. He was adapting to life after a 30-year career while living with post-cardiac surgery pain. That's persistent chest wall discomfort that affected his breathing and movement following triple bypass surgery. His recovery challenged both his physical capabilities and his identity as someone who always pushed through discomfort. As a firefighter, I was trained to ignore pain, Lance told me during our first session. When someone needed rescuing, you didn't stop because your body hurt. You pushed through. That mindset saved lives, but it nearly derailed my recovery. Lance had his triple bypass surgery after a heart attack that caught him completely by surprise. The surgery saved his life, but the aftermath brought chronic pain along his sternum and ribcage that persisted long after the surgical wounds had healed. The doctors told me recovery would take time, but I was determined to bounce back quickly, he explained. I started a home renovation project just 3 weeks after surgery. By the end of the first day, I was in excruciating pain. I spent the next week barely able to move. This pattern continued as Lance repeatedly pushed himself to his limits, crashed for days afterward, then started the cycle again once he felt marginally better. Each time, his frustration grew. My wife finally said something that hit home, Lance shared. She said, "You wouldn't expect a fire truck to run without refueling. Why do you expect that from your body?" That's when I realized I needed a different approach. When Lance and I began working together, we started with a simple but powerful technique I call the activity sandwich. Instead of working until pain forced him to stop, Lance began sandwiching short periods of activity between planned rest breaks. At first it felt ridiculous, Lance admitted. I'd work on my woodworking project for just 15 minutes, then rest for 10, even if I felt fine. Part of me thought it was a waste of time. But within 2 weeks, he noticed something surprising. By taking those regular breaks, I was actually accomplishing more overall. Before, I'd push for 3 hours straight, then be down for 3 days. Now I was steadily making progress every day. Lance also began using a timer to track his activity intervals, gradually extending them as his stamina improved. He established a dedicated rest area in his workshop where he could comfortably pause without leaving his project entirely. The game changer was when I stopped seeing rest as doing nothing and started viewing it as an essential part of the work, Lance explained. Just like we had recovery protocols after fighting a fire, I developed recovery protocols for my daily activities. 6 months later, the transformation in Lance's life was remarkable. I've finished more woodworking projects in the past 6 months than I did in the previous 2 years of pushing myself to exhaustion, he shared. My comfort levels have increased significantly, and I'm sleeping better than I have in years. What struck me most was how Lance's mindset shifted. I used to think pacing was for people who weren't tough enough, he reflected. Now I understand it's actually a skill that takes discipline and intelligence. It's about working smarter, not harder. Lance has even started teaching woodworking classes specifically designed for other cardiac recovery patients, incorporating pacing principles right into his instruction. I teach them how to build beautiful things while rebuilding their lives, he says. The pacing strategies are as important as the woodworking techniques. Let me briefly share what science tells us about pacing and pain recovery. Our bodies operate like a sophisticated energy management system, complete with natural rhythms and recovery cycles. When we work with these rhythms instead of against them, something remarkable happens. Our internal pain modulation systems function more effectively. Research shows that consistent overexertion can trigger what pain scientists call central sensitization, a process where our nervous system becomes increasingly reactive to pain signals. Think of it like an alarm system that gets more sensitive after being repeatedly triggered. Effective pacing, on the other hand, helps calm this heightened sensitivity. It gives our body's natural pain dampening mechanisms, those wonderful endorphins and other neurochemicals, time to work properly. It's like giving your internal pain recovery system the breathing room it needs to function optimally. Studies also show that the boom and bust cycle of overactivity followed by forced rest actually reinforces pain pathways in the brain. When we pace effectively, we interrupt this cycle and create opportunities for new, more helpful neural connections, harnessing neuroplasticity for recovery rather than reinforcing pain. So how might you incorporate pacing into your own pain recovery journey? Let's chat about some approaches based on what worked for Lance and others I've worked with. One powerful place to start is with the activity sandwich technique that helped Lance transform his woodworking practice. Try identifying an activity that typically causes you pain, then divide it into smaller segments with planned rest breaks in between. The key is to take these breaks before you need them, not waiting until pain forces you to stop. For Lance, this meant 15 minutes of woodworking followed by 10 minutes of rest, but your intervals might be completely different. Some people start with just 5 minutes of activities and 10 minutes of rest. The important thing is finding a rhythm that works for your body and your specific activities. Another helpful approach is what I call task modification. This involves analyzing activities that cause you pain and finding ways to adjust how you can perform them. Lance redesigned his workshop setup to minimize bending and reaching, and he invested in lighter tools that put less strain on his chest. What adaptations might make your important activities more sustainable? That's important to think about. The next thing is time-based pacing can also be transformative. Rather than pushing to finish a task in one sitting, set a timer for a manageable period and stop when it rings, even if you feel like you could continue. Lance found that using a simple kitchen timer kept him accountable to his pacing plan when the firefighter in him wanted to push through. Don't underestimate the power of strategic rest either. Lance discovered that the quality of his rest periods mattered as much as their frequency. He created a comfortable chair in his workshop where he could rest without completely disengaging from his projects. What would quality rest look like in the context of your daily activities? Perhaps, most importantly, try shifting how you think about rest. As Lance learned, rest isn't doing nothing. It's an active part of accomplishing your goals. It's as essential to your progress as the act of work itself. In my other videos, we explored different aspects of pain recovery that complement these pacing strategies. Remember, pacing isn't about limiting yourself. It's about finding sustainable ways to do what matters to you. Lance's story shows us that sometimes doing less in the moment allows us to accomplish more in the long run. By working with your body's natural rhythms rather than fighting against them, you might discover a more sustainable and fulfilling path forward. So it's bye for now, and I'm wishing you a comfortable week.